Hey, welcome to Sam Outside. I'm Sam and I'm outside um, practicing a little phenology. Yeah, and that's the noticing of the changing of your environment according to the seasons. So the seasonal change. Yeah, I'm up here on the top of the ridge, and you'll notice that most of the hardwoods, mostly maples, they're looking a little more bare. And, as I start to round the trail and I'm going to start heading down closer to Heart Lake, yeah, a lot of those beech and the younger maples, they still have their leaves. And some of the young beech, maybe in the saplings before they become trees, they might hold on to their leaves throughout the winter, much like an oak might. So, the sun is not quite over the horizon yet. It's happening. Um, there's a lot of leaf litter on the ground. The forest is a little more bare than it would normally be at this time in other seasons. Part of the reason for it being so bare on top of this hill, a little bit of that has to do with the wind, all right, because I'm at the top of the ridge. These treetops are a little more exposed to prevailing winds, so that in and of itself would account for some of their leaf loss. But most of it has to do with because of how dry it was. We had an unusual, an untypical dry summer, and a lot of these trees up here on this hilltop, they don't have a lot of soil base. In fact, the stone is only inches away, so there's not a lot of capacity for storing and holding groundwater. So the ground up here just always a little more dry. It's not until I get onto the slope, it's not until I get closer to Heart Lake, where we see a change in the forest, but also a change in the ability for the soil to hold its water and better support the diversity and plant life that is associated with riparian zones, things closer to water. So the leaf litter up here is amazing. I've not had this much leaf litter at this time of year. I mean, you can just hear it, right? And that sort of changes other aspects of the wildlife. For example, I normally would not start feeding the birds this early in the season. I wait until a lot of the other wildlife would go into torpor or hibernation. And we just haven't had those temperatures because it's, seasonably still warm out during the day. And this morning is our first real frost, right? There's a little bit of ice on some of the puddles. There's definitely some scrapable frost on our windshields. So it's a couple degrees below freezing. So that's typical at this time of year. We've had a warm spell the past couple of weeks. A nice way to spend late fall, but we're getting back to our seasonal temperatures. But because of how dry it is and the early change of our fall colors, our leaf drop, we've had a shortage of food available for a lot of the birds. I'm not convinced that a lot of the trees have produced the same amount of seeds and fruit. I haven't noticed an overabundance in my forest of acorns relative to other years. And so a lot of that's just due to the stress, right? And maybe due to the energy put into maintaining leaves and maintaining energy into the roots and trunk, all other aspects of the tree before its fruit. And the same with even our coniferous trees. I'm not seeing an overabundance of cones. So watching nature, watching fruit and seeds, flowers, those things that would typically be around at a certain time of year when there's a change, and when you're noticing those aspects relative to the calendar and the daylight and what's been happening with weather, accounts for the science of phenology. So I do know that the birds are a nice indicator. So I've seen geese; they're flocking. Yeah, it's migratory bird season. So I'm still seeing birds. I'm still hearing the pop of shotguns first thing in the morning, later on in the evening. So quite aware of what should be happening in nature, but it seems to be a little bit sooner than normal according to food availability and resources, not just the amount of daylight. The forest is a little stressed. I commented on that earlier in the season. I'm definitely seeing the ramifications of that dry spell, even at this time of year. We're gonna have about a week of rain coming up, and the forest really need it, but kind of too little too late. So take a look around, explore some of your natural spaces, and try and use your memory to notice if what's happening near you in your neck of the woods, as it were, is consistent with what the calendar date is, and try to notice some animal behavior. Right, start with birds. Are they still around? Have they migrated early? What are the food sources like? How did local gardens do? Talk to farmers, talk to gardeners, talk to people at your farmers market. Right, just get a sense of how other living things that support the foundation food sources for other living things. That's a great way to think about it. Right, so we know how ecosystems are doing based on their support systems. Right? So a lot of patterns in nature rely on each other, and often they are cyclical, right? So the abundance of predators in your area is very relative to the number of prey animals, and the number of prey animals very relative to stressors, right? So the number of prey animals may be controlled by or influenced by pressure from predators, pressure from human development, but also habitat. So that includes availability of food, shelter, and water. And when it's been this dry, yep, there are some things that are just not around. All right, so food sources are a little different. Shelter, in terms of leaf litter, might not be as relative to the typical needs of wildlife in your area, and you'll start to see that. So go out and practice some phenology. Ask questions, get curious. All right, it's all happening. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Go outside, notice a change. Thanks again. Talk to you later.